Hi, I'm Weston Phillips, and I'm an application security engineer at GuidePoint Security. I'm going to be giving a demonstration of the Veracode platform and show how it can be used by the development and security teams to ensure that security is tracked throughout the SDLC process and we can monitor an organization's compliance. So this can be used as a central location for the security team so they can pull reports and keep an eye on the compliance. For this demonstration, we'll be focusing specifically on static analysis, even though Veracode offers scanning capabilities for SCA, DAS, and containers. Static analysis is used when we want to take a look at our application at the code level to identify any flaws. So this starts with uploading packaged artifacts of our application to the Veracode platform, and the engine will analyze the code at rest and report back flaws according to the source file and line number. So upon logging in, we'll see the platform homepage. We can see our recent applications, we can start a scan, or we can go directly to the Veracode documentation. Before we perform any scans, we need to set up an application profile in Veracode. This is a container that will hold all of our scan information for a piece of software for our applications. So to create one, we can go to All Applications and click on Add New Application. We can give our application a name. I'm just going to use my initials and Verademo. We can provide a quick description. And we can give it any tags to use for filtering purposes. In policy control section, we can classify the criticality of how our application should be scored. This is a concept that more critical applications should require higher quality scores to be acceptable risks. This can be determined by many different things like the deployed environment or the value of data within the application. Veracode also provides some guidance around this to help you choose the level if you need this. So for this, I'm just going to say medium. And then for the policy, this is used to filter against the flaws found. So these are typically set up by the security team, and it's not telling your scanner what to look for, but it can be used to determine if your app is secure based on your own set of requirements and standards. We can either create a custom policy or we can use some of Veracode's built-in ones. For now, I'm going to use a built-in policy, but we can go ahead later and create a new policy. So I'm going to set mine to medium. This organizational information is optional. It's some metadata that we can put in. I'm going to put my name for the business owner, and I'm going to put in my email so that I can receive notifications for when pre-scans or scans and package uploads are finished. In visibility, we can specify who can see our application profile. We can have it to be either just the security team leads or the teams and themselves. This is some more metadata that we can put in optionally. I'm not going to put in any right now. So now we have our application profile, and next we can go through setting up the policy that we can use for this application. To create a policy, you can go to the Policies tab at the top, and then click on Add New Policy. We can give it a name. We're just going to use the same format that I used for our application profile. And then you can provide a description. In the next tab, this is where you're going to set your rules for the policy. And you can set these on a number of different factors. So we can say findings by severity, and you can select which type of scans that you want this policy to apply to. We can just say static scans. And you can set the severity that you want to choose. So if I select high and above, if our scans find any findings that are high or very high, it'll automatically fail our policy. You can set it by CWE category, and you can select the vulnerability category that you want your policy to fail on. And then you can be more specific and do CWID for the specific finding. We can set the findings by scan types. You can do static, dynamic, or the manual penetration testing. You can set a minimum scan score that you want your application to be at to be able to pass policy. So we could say we want our application to have a scan score of 75 and above to be able to pass. And then you can do our security standards, which Veracode has some built in. You can do the auto update OWASP top 10, which this will look for any findings in this category. If those are reported back on our scans, it'll fail those policies. They have some PCI ones too, if your organization is has to be in compliance with that. For the evaluation timeframe, we can define when these findings will impact the policy. So we can set before, and then we can select a date. And so any findings before this date, that's when it will affect the policy. We can set grace periods as well. This way we can say findings by severity, and we can give a grace period and a number of days for each finding. So we can say very high findings have 7 days to be fixed. Highs can have 14, and then we can say everything else we're going to give 30 days before it'll start impacting the policy. And you can set minimum scan score that you want your application to be at to be able to pass or fail policy. And then custom severities by CWE. This is where you can customize or higher or lower priorities for specific CWE findings. So we can say that for environment issues, we want to set this to something higher or lower. Veracode, it'll give the Veracode severity. So this is a low. And if we wanted to, we could set this as a medium or anything higher. In the last tab, this is where we can set the scan requirements. So we can say any scan type, and we want it to either run once, or we can say weekly, monthly. We can separate it out by the specific scan type and say we want static analysis to run weekly. We could say dynamic analysis, we want to run this monthly, and then manual penetration testing, you can set this up as well. So if we hit finish, now we have created our policy, and we can go back to our application. And we can set this policy to enforce it on our application profile. We click on our application, we go to profile. And then in the policy control section, we can go ahead and we can select that policy that we just created. And we save that. Now our policy that we just created is enforced on our application profile. Now that we have our application profile and our policy set up, we can go ahead and start scanning. So we can click start a scan and start a static scan. We can give the scan a name, which by default, it'll just contain the date and the type of scan. We can give the lifecycle stage that our application is in. So we could say it's deployed and it's in production and it's being actively developed. And then for auto scan after pre-scan, this will set to either run automatically after the pre-scan is finished. So once we upload our application, Veracode will go through and make sure all the files that are needed are compiled completely, and it'll let us know if there's any warnings or if there's things missing, and then it'll kick off the full scan afterwards. Once you're getting your scans automated, you'll probably want to set this to on so that it'll start those scans automatically after pre-scan. But for first scans, we'll set this to off so that we can take a look at the pre-scan warnings before this full scan happens. After that, we can upload our packaged code. And Veracode provides some pretty extensive documentation around packaging your code. You can select it by your language and the framework that you use. For mine is mainly in TypeScript, so I'm just uploading a zip file containing our source code. And then once you hit next, it's going to start that pre-scan. And you can exit out and come back whenever the pre-scan is finished, but this is going to identify any top-level modules and scan dependencies for our application, which is a component of your application that Veracode identifies as having entry points for external data. And so once this is finished, we'll be able to go through and review the warnings and then select our modules for the full scan. Now that our pre-scan is finished, we can go through and select the modules that we want to scan. So at the top, we can see that Veracode already identified an issue with our package code, and it provides some information for us. So for the module selection, we can view it in either simple mode, which will give us a number of the uploaded modules that are scannable and unscannable. And then in advanced mode, we can choose the specific modules that we want to scan. So it's giving us any warnings with our uploaded modules. So for this one, we can see that one of my modules is not able to be scanned because there's no scannable binaries. So for this, we're just going to select these other two modules. And now we can start our scan and we can review the findings once this is finished. After the scan finishes, we can take a look at some of the findings that have come back. In this results section, we can get a summarized view of our results. At the top, we can see if our application passed our policy compliance, and we can also see the score that was given to the application. This score is a weighted average of the number of flaws of various severities that were found in our application. We can see how many findings of each severity we have. We can see the vulnerability categories that are the top risks in our application. And then as we run more scans on this profile, we can track the remediation efforts of the findings. We can see what's been fixed. We can see new open flaws and mitigated flaws. If we want to dive deeper, we can click on the report. This will bring up the executive summary, which gives another high-level overview of the results. We can see the number of findings in each vulnerability category and the severity. We scroll down to our action items. We can see what to focus on so that we can pass the policy. It'll even give us flaws that we need to fix to get our scan score up to the minimum score. So we can see that our policy has a minimum score of 75, and we need to fix 4 high flaws and 87 medium flaws so we can get up to that score. If we go into the policy control, we can see each rule on our policy and the status of it. So we can see our requirement for no high findings, and then it will show us how many of those we have and show that we did not pass. We can see other remediation efforts and if we pass the scan requirements. So the executive summary looks at all the risk. The policy control is going to take those findings and apply to our policy. In the findings and recommendations tab, this is where we're going to start going into the category of the findings. It'll give you the exact flaw in the code that was found, the location and the line number. It's going to provide a description of the findings. And if we want to go one step further, we can go into the triage flaws view to look at the source code. So this is going to show the severity, the exploitability, the finding that was found, and the location. If we open it up, we can get a description of the vulnerability and the remediation efforts, and we can see the exact line where this was found in the code. We can add comments. We can mark this as false positive if we want. We can even look at the data path, and it will show where the data comes in and where it's being used in an unsafe way. If we want, we can even schedule a consultation with the Veracode AppSec consultant. This can be for helping uploading our packaged application or to get general remediation guidance on some of the findings that we have. So that's kind of the process you can go through to review the results of your scan. You can even leverage sandboxes that you can create within an application in Veracode. This will allow you to have parallel versions of the application running at one time. You can keep track of different branches and see the statuses of each one. Sandbox scans won't affect policy compliance, so you can get a head start of found flaws in your application with these sandbox scans and fix them earlier in the SDLC. So for example, when your app is in development, you can be scanning in your sandbox, and as the code is merged into the main branch and deployed, that's when you'd want to promote it out of the sandbox. Veracode also offers a range of integrations that you can set up. You can integrate with different IDEs like Eclipse and VS Code, and you can run IDE scans, you can analyze individual files that are open within the developer's project. These types of scans can complete in less than 1 minute and can help developers detect flaws earlier in the SDLC. You can integrate with REST APIs, and you can integrate with ticketing systems like Jira and Azure DevOps. With these integrations, you can automatically create tickets and merge them into your developer backlogs. So in this demonstration, we've seen some of the features that the Veracode platform offers. This is going to allow your organization to shift left and keep track of security throughout your SDLC. So by embedding Veracode into your existing development program, we ensure that security assessments and vulnerability remediations are completed during logical points throughout your development lifecycle. So thank you so much, and I hope you've enjoyed this demonstration.